working in Elm, I'm just like heads down on features the entire time. I look up and I'm like, oh, 4 hours have passed and all I've done is feature work. Well, I guess that's a successful day. Like,
Hey folks, welcome back to Elm Town. I'm your host, Jared M. Smith. We'll be visiting with Wolfgang Schuster today, talking about working at Vendr, his journey to Elm. But first, let's talk about our sponsor, Logistically. At Logistically, we make intuitive software for the logistics industry to help logistics professionals make better decisions and spend less time on manual tasks. From coding to tracking, our transportation management system helps squeeze every drop of efficiency from logistics teams of all sizes. Logistically pays me to record Elm Town episodes, as well as pays for our production and hosting costs. We build the front end for all new features in Elm. If you're interested in our mission and enjoy writing Elm, please drop us a line, elmtown@logisticallyinc.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. Now, Wolfgang. He's a senior software engineer at Vendr. You may recognize him as Wolfadex on Elm Slack, where he regularly helps folks. Some of his Elm contributions include being the author and curator of the Elm Weekly newsletter. He has published 3 game-related packages, Elm ECS, Elm Text Adventure, and Tyler. He's also published Elm Open API. These are all under the Wolfadex prefix. And some more. He occasionally talks about Elm on his blog, Wolfgang's Musings. Wolfgang, welcome to Elm Town.
thank you for having me, Jared.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So tell me, how did you get started in computing?
Computing, kind of by accident, actually. In high school, my senior year, I had an open slot for a class. I was going to take work study because I was working a full-time restaurant job around then. And I couldn't because I was also driving my brother to and from school. So I had to fill it with something. I knew this teacher, Mr. O, awesome guy, really liked sitting around in his classes. He taught like this AP Java class, and I would sit in during homeroom. I'd go down to the computer lab and do CAD stuff, make chessboards, make mechs, whatever I could in CAD. And I just liked hanging out around his classes. I'm like, oh, I'll take a class with him. What's this VB6 class thing? What's this programming thing? I'll take that. And kind of just happened from there. Kind of got obsessed.
Okay. Yeah. And so I was looking back at your LinkedIn history, and you mentioned working at a restaurant. Was this the one? What was it? I feel like Elm was in the name.
Coincidentally, yes. A complete coincidence. Elm Grove Inn no longer exists. A little like family-owned restaurant near where I grew up. So, yeah, good times though.
Well, you know how it is with Elm. We can't help but notice it in everything, right? So,
it happens more often than you would imagine for me.
yeah. Well, I remember also there was the corner of Elm. Was it Elm Street and Haskell? There's a picture of it.
Yeah. I live in Chicago, and my wife and I were walking, and she goes, "Oh, Elm Street, we should move to the street." And I'm like, I don't know if I can do like my entire life be surrounded by elm, but I didn't say that out loud. I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I can take any more elm. And she's like, what's wrong with that? And going on, and came to realize that she was thinking Freddy Krueger from the horror movies, because she loves horror movies, and I was thinking Elm the language, and so we were on just totally different trajectories there.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, so the photo that I'm talking about is the intersection of Elm and Haskell, and it was posted by Heakira. So I think you can now get that via Wikimedia Commons. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Yeah. But yeah, okay, so you found this teacher who inspired you, and you were sitting in learning Java. At what point were you like, okay, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life versus this is just something I'm playing around with?
That took me a while longer. So I was senior of high school. graduated high school, kind of knew I wanted to do something engineering. I would say through most of high school. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew I liked putting things together. I like building things. So I went to community college for programming related things for about a year, then took some time off, then made some friends who were still in college, and hanging out with them, I was like, oh, I really want to get back into college. Like, I want to do more than what I'm doing right now. One of my friends was trying to get into games journalism at the time, and I was still really obsessed with this idea of making games. I just liked playing games, I liked making them. Like, I want to do more of this. And through him, I met some game developers at a couple studios, and they were like, go get your 4 year computer science degree. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. So that was, I think I was around like 21, 22 at that time then. So I'd been out of college for a couple ish years at that point. Yeah. I was like, yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to go programming. Like, this is what I need to do to make games.
Okay. So you went all in at that point.
Yeah, I dropped out of my job. I had no job for a couple of months. Went back to college full time. Coincidentally, met my wife that way. She helped me. Yeah. It was a quick it was a wild 3 4 years. I want to say something like that. Yeah,
Wow.
it
Okay.
was. I could talk
So,
forever about just that even too.
yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, about your education and what you learned at the university. I know your intention was to go into building games, right? But you are now not building games. So, was it something that you learned where you thought, okay, I can do anything with programming and I'll be happy? Or was it just this is where you found work?
Initially, it was where I found work. I think it was the second year back in college. I got an internship for, coincidentally, a logistics company. So that's where I
Hey.
got my start in software, was logistics. That was a company that no longer exists. They've gotten bought out 2 or 3 times since then. And so I was working there, kind of enjoyed it. It was a little bit more formal of a place, a little bit more old school ish compared to, say, a startup. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this thing. I was still, at that time, I was still very much into games. I was also kind of spending my spare time, I won't say working necessarily, but spending a lot of time with this startup indie game studio called Digital Iris, based out of Milwaukee. And they ended up getting a contract with Oculus. This was shortly after Oculus got bought by Facebook. And through the owner of the studio, he had some connections, so he got this contract, and he's like, hey, you want to come do this contract for a couple months? My wife was like, Wolfgang, you love games, this could be your in. I'm like, I don't know, it's really risky to quit my job right now. Do I do it? And we're like, no, we're just gonna go for it. We're gonna make it work. I quit my internship. I did the contract work for a month or two, and I mean, it was a ton of fun. Came out of that, and I was like, okay, now I need to find a job. I have a couple months saved up now. Need to find a job, and that was when I ended up at Corvisa, basically. And I was there for a few months or so, and then school was about to start back up, and I went and talked to him. I'm like, I'm working here full time, but I don't have a degree. Should I be going back to school? What are you expecting of me? And they're like, no, we don't care. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, you're doing a good job. I'm like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Yeah, and it just kind of happened from there. I think I realized after a while that I just enjoy building things. Games are fun, but really it's the building things for other people is what kind of drives me.
Excellent. Yeah. And so to go back to Digital Iris, when you were making this Oculus or doing this Oculus related contract, what technologies did you use for that project?
That was all Unity. I think they had C Sharp and JavaScript, like scripting language as well. I think that was post Boostscript, which was their like I want to say their PHP like scripting language that they had for a while. Yeah, so C Sharp, a lot of C Sharp, a lot of Unity. I was writing a lot of Unity around that time. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that seems like an interesting place to cut your teeth from the things that I've heard about that environment. It's really scrappy. It's really, just get things done any way you can. Did you feel like there was a difference in that culture versus coming then to I guess I don't know about Corvisa. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit, but maybe a difference from there and other places you've worked.
No, no. I mean, growing up, like my both my parents were. My dad is very much into engineering type things. Like, so he was building his. He been working on and off on his own house for a couple decades now. But at one time, he built a crane inside of his house to lift the logs up because it's a log cabin. So that's what I grew up with was that type of engineering mentality of just make it work.
Yeah.
Um, I would say my mom instilled a lot of the same like just make it work type mentality in me. And so like restaurant jobs, same thing. It's get the work done, get the plates out, get the food out, get the people served. Going into software, it was for me it was very much the same, like figure out how to make it work. Pre-college, like post high school a little bit in there, I was learning like C through a friend and through videos I could find online and anything I could grab. So then, yeah, that's how I got into Unity then, and like C Sharp was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna learn it because that's how I use Unity and that's how I make a game and that's what I want to do. Corvisa, same thing. Startups, like I kind of knew JavaScript from my logistics company internship, but I didn't like that was the first time I learned Node was that interview process. I'm like, they want me to write an app in Node? Okay, what's this? Time to learn it. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. And yeah, having a crane in the house, that sounds like an engineering challenge in itself. So what was that like having that there? I mean, were you around that? I mean, obviously you knew about
Not
it.
too much. No, I'd come and visit on weekends sometimes, and living in one house, and then while he's building the cabin, seeing the crane sticking up, and as logs were going up, every time I'd come visit, it was, another like 2 or 4 feet of logs that he had placed. So eventually the trusses and everything. So it was more like step by step for me at that time. But
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so this what we're talking about, Digital Iris and then Corvisa. At this point, you had not discovered Elm yet, I take it?
so Corvisa is actually where I learned about Elm. I had a friend from there, Sean, who was really big into functional programming, and he introduced me to Haskell and to Elm. And so every day, I remember for a while because we sat right next to each other, and every day for a while it'd be him sending me this, oh, check out this cool thing in Haskell, or oh, check out this cool functional programming thing. And so I really tried learning Haskell for a long time. I think it ended up taking me a good 4 years to finally grasp what I was doing in Haskell. But Elm, like, I tried it a little bit at the time. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I don't know what to do with it right now because I'm still, I was, that was still at the point where I was like, okay, I've just dropped out of college. What am I doing?
Sure.
So Elm was still just kind of this weird other front endy thing. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was where I was introduced to it. I didn't end up coming back to it until 2018. So that was, I think, around 2015, I want to say, was when I was first introduced to it. And I ended up coming back to it about 3-ish years later when I was like, hey, I need some front endy thing. What's out there? What's going on right now in the front end world?
Right on. Okay. And so you had remembered Elm and kind of came back to it. Where were you at this point? Were you still at Corvisa?
No. So after Corvisa, I went to Northwestern Mutual. I was there for about a year doing React with them. And then I made my way out to Denver. We were trying to move and found a job out there at a company called Four Winds Interactive. That is where I kind of started to get back into Elm again. I'd been doing React for a few years at that point, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. What else? What else? Where did this inspiration come from? I
Mhm.
like learning about things that are adjacent to whatever I'm doing. So Elm kind of came back in again, and I was like, it shared a lot of things with React, with like Redux, for example, was slightly based off of Elm. I'm like, okay, why? Why is it based off of Elm? What is Elm doing? And yeah, it just kind of went from there.
Oh, cool. So, yeah, do you mind to explain how Redux is inspired by Elm?
Sure. So Redux is kind of like the update portion of Elm. So when you're writing your model, your view, your update, your init, all that in Elm, Redux is basically the update portion. Takes your state, your model, some action as it would have been called in Redux or message in Elm, and you compute a new state, possibly side effects or whatever else is going on there as well.
Okay. And I don't know much about it, but so then I'll just ask some questions. A question about Redux. What would be the similarity in regards to, like you said, there could be side effects? So, was there an intention to try to reduce those side effects? I feel like I remember hearing something about that.
There have been, I know there are like Elm styled Redux packages or Redux implementations or layers to give you that like managed effect type of experience that Elm provides. That's not the core part of Redux though. Redux is really more about that unidirectional data flow. So in
Gotcha.
Elm, how you have your update and your view, and your view fires a message off or relays a message to update. Update computes a new state, gives it to view, and that cycle just repeats over and over again. Redux is that component to a React app, say, or whatever. It gives you your new state. Your state generates a new view in React. React fires off an action, goes back into Redux, and you get that unidirectional flow.
Okay. So at this point, you had sort of rediscovered Elm through Redux, and then what did you do then? I mean, did you have something that you felt like Elm was solving a problem for you, or was it more of just, oh, this is really interesting, I'm just going to kind of keep pulling at that and see what that thread unfurls?
Yeah. I very much started as my hobby projects. I'm always starting and very rarely finishing hobby projects. And for a long time it was React for me. React, I had been writing it at work, so it was very easy for me to pick up at home. And as I was learning Elm, it just was so much easier for me to go in and get something spun up and working the first time. And so I just all it slowly transitioned of like 100% React at home to 90 to 80. Before you knew it, I wasn't writing any React at home anymore. And so at work, I was like, this is really weird that like I've been so into this tool, and when I have a choice, I don't use it. That I don't pick up this tool anymore. Why is that? And trying to figure out like, okay, can I use Elm at work? Would it make sense at work? So I did kind of use it at work at Four Winds. I never got to finish that project. Unfortunately, I did. I ended up leaving Four Winds before the project was finished. Slight tangent. They do digital signage. So if you're at like a fast food place and the menu boards, or you fly through an airport and you see some sign, those
Yeah.
types of digital signage.
Okay.
And they had one version of that ran on TVs that was web apps distributed all over the world. Doesn't matter where you live, there's a chance you run into their signage. And it was all jQuery and CSS and HTML and state like stored in CSS styles or CSS class names. It was quite a project to work on. I was like,
Interesting.
okay, we need to do something to make this more manageable. It's very challenging for 1 to 2 people to manage, and that just shouldn't happen.
Yeah, that's not going to scale well if you're already facing those challenges.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was an amazing project, and at the same time, it was so frustrating some days. But yeah, so we started a rewrite in Elm. Yeah, that was the first time I got to experience Elm like production wise at a company. And then that kind of led into my next job, which was Square. I was there for 2.5 years. I did not get to write. I was not on a team writing Elm there, but I did help a team who was writing Elm for a little bit. I kind of like consulted with them, I guess you could say, here and there over those
Oh,
2.5 years.
okay.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something. I'm going to ask you about that again. So let's keep that square
Yep.
in mind. But I want to go back because you said that Elm was something that you felt like was helping you to solve this challenge of kind of maintaining and kind of wrangling this project at Four Winds, right?
Hmm.
Or at least that was the intention. You didn't get to finish that. You also said something that I thought was interesting. You said Elm was easier for me, or something along those lines. What exactly was it that you felt like made it easier?
I think it's two things. One is definitely the error messages. I struggle a lot reading dense pieces of text. Logs is a great example. I hate reading logs. I absolutely despise reading logs in any programming environment whatsoever. To me, it's just a giant wall of text, and my eyes struggle to sift through the text for the important parts. So Elm's error messages was a breath of fresh air, I guess, in terms of like, oh, it's well spaced, it's highlighting exactly what's important, so it's telling me what's important, not me having to figure out what's important. And
Right.
then the other part was that having spent so many years in JavaScript, like I started back at the logistics company, I started with EXTJS, which most people at this point don't remember or have never even heard of. And after that, I was doing some jQuery. I was doing, what else was there? There was React. I did a little bit of Ember at that time. I think I had tried out Angular on my own quite a bit back, like Angular JS, as I think it's called now, Angular 1, basically.
Yeah.
I was there around when Angular 2 was coming out, and I noticed this reoccurring pattern of just how challenging it is to maintain large code bases of JavaScript, like 300, 400,000 line plus code bases of JavaScript. No company I've worked at has been able to do it well. They always end up falling behind. Always. There's always like 20 packages that are, at least a minor version behind, another 5 that are a couple major versions behind. And I tried to keep up with it, but I never could. And so coming to Elm, I was like, oh, cool. It's easy to keep things updated. That's one thing I just never have to worry about now in my code base is how challenging that is in JavaScript. I'm like, cool. I don't want to have to think about that ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things that when I first discovered Elm that I honed in on. It was enforced semantic versioning. I was like, oh, okay. I have had some serious challenges trying to enforce that, not just with front end projects, but also with Node.js projects. I remember one time I was working on a project where it was deployed to production, and we had some issue and we couldn't figure out what it was. We ran through testing, no issues. I think this was before there was a package lock. So it had bumped like just a maybe a minor version. I don't know. Maybe it's just a patch version. And we ended up going through. It's like, okay, you take these 150,000, packages. I'll take the next 150,000. That's an exaggeration, but it was a lot of packages we were going through, trying to figure out, okay, where has this changed, and how do we get back to it? And we were on a crunch because now it was deployed to production, and we needed to
Yep.
to get back to working. So yeah, that was something that definitely helped me understand one of the benefits of Elm. And then later on, I didn't realize just how powerful that was when you combine it with the type system and the compiler and all the guarantees that come with that. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you feel like Elm was easier, and then you helped a team at Square that was building something with Elm, but you were not on that team. Were you still doing a lot of side projects with Elm at that point, or
Yeah, pretty much always.
Okay,
I always have some. I would say I probably have 3 or 4 that I'm working on at once usually. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I was still writing a lot of Elm on the side. Trying to think of what anything in particular. That was around the time I helped Dylan pair on a web component thing to wrap the Square payment system so that it could be used in an Elm app. Because this was like right at the beginning of the pandemic. I was new at Square. I had no clue what I was doing there yet because I'd only been there for like a month. And Dylan Kearns was talking about building this payment thing to help out a farmer's market in his area. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, I know Elm and I have resources at Square. I'll see what I can figure out.
oh yeah, that's right. I remember seeing that project. Okay, so you helped him with that, and you were also helping folks at Square. What do you feel like was your role in helping them on their project?
I was kind of like hey, we have a question and we're not quite comfortable going to the Elm Slack to ask it type stuff. So a little bit of that. I introduced Elm Review for them. There was also coincidentally, yes. Always need more Elm Review. Always
Yes,
need more.
love Elm Review. Shout out
Oh,
to Jeroen.
oh yes. And so at Four Winds and at Square, coincidentally, both were using AWS, the AWS SDK in JavaScript, and then needed to somehow combine that with Elm. That is challenging. The SDK has gotten a lot better in the years, but at that time, it did a lot of this based
Mm.
stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of references to this within the SDK. So if you're familiar with this in JavaScript, it's the way it was wrapping functions. It expected everything to exist in JavaScript in the SDK itself. You're not supposed to unwrap anything really, and it was challenging. It was challenging to make requests. So I kind of helped them with a couple hacky non-port Elm to JavaScript communication things to make it work easy for them.
Okay, interesting. And so you had sent me a contact to ask a question about your experience, your journey to Elm, if you will,
Yeah.
from Will Thomas. Where did you work with Will?
Four Winds.
Okay, all right. So I want to go back to that then before we move on too far.
Okay.
The question, and I've kind of paraphrased it. Tell us how you went about convincing our dev management to choose Elm for a major product. He had to win over engineers, he being you, had to win over engineers as well as product, and was successful in doing so.
Yeah, that was I was like a 6 month process. So I had this like bug in my head, this itch in my head, if you will, that like this needs to get rewritten. It's beyond the point of like migrating this code base. And so I kind of took some spare time of my own and rewrote portions of it in Elm, and then went to my manager, I think it was at the time, was like, hey, like, I really think this needs to happen. Here's a POC of how I think it can happen. I found like some template of like a, oh, what was it? Like a engineering like POC, like talk to your manager like how he like plan or something. Just kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
same thing coming back from everything else I've done. Just it's got to get done. How can we make it happen? It's like how can I convince my manager to make this happen? So yeah, so I filled that in, filled in this template. I put down like why I thought Elm fit, why I thought React would work, what other things I had looked at the time, why they wouldn't work, what would we gain, what would we lose. I was like, hey, let's talk about this. We need to talk about this because this is not sustainable. And so I did a bit more work then, went to a bunch of meetings over the course of, I want to say it was like 6 months. Maybe it was a little bit less than that. And showed off to then like head of front end, CTO, bunch of other people way above me at the time. They were like, yeah, like this seems like a worthwhile investment. Let's go for it.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So you mentioned first presenting it to your manager. So that would be the dev management team at that point. What strategies did you use for that part of it?
Oh, I don't know that I really had a strategy. I'm really bad at strategy, which is funny because I love strategy games and of all kinds, and I'm really bad at it. I just kind of just go into it blind in a way, semi-blind. I think it helps that I really like learning in my spare time. So when my manager's like, "What about React? What about Angular? What about keeping it as it is? What about Rust or whatever questions they had?" I knew I could answer because that's what I do in my spare time is read about everything else I can and play around with everything else I can until just because I enjoy learning it. So I think that won't work for everyone. Not everyone has that kind of spare time or that kind of drive to just do those things in their spare time. So I think I kind of got lucky there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So you felt like you had prepared enough with your research and understanding the domain of the problem. And so you created this proof of concept. So that I think goes a long way to present, a partly working solution where I think when people can see something, they can really start to visualize how it might be successful.
Yes.
So when you were creating that, I'm going to bring you back to strategy here. Did you have a strategy for which parts you put into that proof of concept? Or was it just, okay, I see a part, I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to do this?
No real strategy. I think that also kind of was accidental. I found early on with programming, probably way back in high school, even when I just learned that programming was a thing, that I liked recreating things I knew to better learn. So that kind of was where the POC came from. Is I'm trying to understand this project I'm working on. I can't say I really understand it. Oh, I also am trying to learn Elm and kind of know Elm. Why don't I rebuild my work project in Elm? And I
Okay.
had done that with prior projects, like everything else, every company I've worked for, I've done some aspect of I don't fully understand the project I'm working on. Let me try to rebuild it in something I do understand and try to gain this better understanding of what's going on. So my POC was very much a I'm trying to learn this project and understand what's happening.
Yeah, I like that. I guess to bring it into terms we often hear in the Elm world is you constrained the problem so that you took a technology that you understood pretty well and then used that to be able to focus on the software, the product that you were trying to understand.
Yeah. I think that's why I do all of my side projects. Like 99% of my side projects in Elm is because it lets me focus so much on that. Like even mentioning before with like maintaining JavaScript projects, like even my personal ones, it's so challenging to maintain that I'm distracted from focusing on the project. And so working in Elm, I'm just like, heads down on features the entire time. I look up and I'm like, oh, 4 hours have passed and all I've done is feature work. Well, I guess that's a successful day. Like,
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing that you want your company to hear, right? As a manager, you want to hear, "Hey, I was just working on features all day." That sounds productive. So
very, very.
so I definitely agree with that and I feel that, but what do you think it is about Elm that helps you do that? If you could pinpoint a couple of things.
The compiler is definitely part of it. The friendliness of the compiler, like error messages, that definitely goes a very long way. Other languages have static types, and I don't feel the same productivity. There aren't many other languages that do semantic or similar versioning the same way Elm does. I think that goes a long way. And I think the culture of moving a little bit slower to an extent, like packages, for example, tend to move a little bit slower. There isn't a new feature in every package every day. And I think I see that a lot more. I think JavaScript's on the more extreme end, opposite end of Elm doing that. That level of like, just let's focus on what we want to build and not features for our language, or I guess more features for our packages. Features for our packages aren't as important as building the thing for the person at the other end. Because at the end of the day, that's like why kind of I write code is for the person at the other end of the code. They're not reading my code. They don't care what language I'm using. They don't care how many or few lines of code I've written. They just want their product to work so that they can get their job done. And Elm really, I think both the culture and the language itself really help me focus on that.
Yeah. And I feel like Elm does a good job of being pragmatic in that approach where you only build things that solve real problems. Versus, I feel like sometimes in the outside world, if you will, in other ecosystems, the the tendency is to latch onto things that are happening right now and to kind of run with these different things before they clearly have a purpose, maybe, if you will. And so it can be easy to become distracted by those things. But also, I guess to play devil's advocate, there's a different scale that things are done at. But I do think definitely that the ecosystem around Elm and the culture is to think about the problem and to be very pragmatic in the approach. And I think that definitely starts. I was talking with Dwayne Crooks a while back. As we're recording this, I just published episode 55 with Dwayne. But we were talking about how we perceive Evan works, and that, he's sort of this digital minimalism, Cal Newport, style of work where there's a lot of distraction-free work that's not focused on what everyone else is doing, but trying to do something that, solves a particular problem and takes the time to do it right versus right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think part of me aspires to work in that way. I'm not very good at it. But I think Elm lets me find a nice balance. Like the package, so the language itself moves at that much slower pace. And then you have the packages which move at a moderate pace, I would say. Some packages have periodic releases, much more frequent than the language itself, but that makes sense.
Right.
Like, packages need to evolve to fit the current needs to an extent. And then there's the product that you and I build with the language and with the packages, and that needs to move faster because our users need to move at us. We need to provide our users with what they need now, not tomorrow, to an extent. And I think for me, it allows me to kind of move at that moderate to fast pace. I feel like I talk to a lot of people in the Elm community who are all about writing their types first. I'm really bad at that. I often find myself writing types later to verify that what I just wrote down without types matches the type system, and it kind of still works for me. It allows me
Yeah.
to, I feel like I can still iterate really fast, like try things out really fast and then go back and tidy things up after I've found what works and make sure that it's still solid for the next person before I move on.
I like that distinction between the way that, or the pace that the language moves versus the pace that the packages move versus the pace that the product moves. And I, I find that I agree because I can build something for a customer, for a user, much faster because I'm not spending my time trying to figure out how to put things together or to update existing packages or to learn new language features, right? I can focus on the business logic, and the type system allows me to build that and model it in such a way that it's clear, it's succinct, and it fits well. I don't have to do a lot of shaping my problem to fit the language feature.
Kind of lead that into to what I've been doing at Vendr actually. I've spent the last 4 months now, I think, introducing more Elm review rules. When I joined Vendr, they had this process called Zamboni that was a GitHub action that ran once a weekend and would run, I think it was 2 Elm review rules and auto fix them, create a PR for someone to merge in on Monday. I kind of made that my task on Mondays for a while, but I didn't like that process. It felt very non-Elm like to me to wait for once a week to get feedback from a tool, whereas like running the compiler, your feedback's almost instant. Like I want that same thing from our Elm review process. So I slowly started reshaping that to run locally. Jeroen did a fantastic job and has continued to do so to make Elm review faster over the past year. I don't even know how much faster it's got to be ridiculous amount faster in this past year alone. Yeah, so I taking all of his work to make it fast, and then all of these rules that I was slowly introducing and using it to delete code. So that, it's really nice to say, Vendr has, 500,000 lines of Elm in production, and here I am bringing that down by, a good 50,000 lines of code. But to me, that kind of fits with the theme of Elm of like focusing on what's important. And it's also, going back to my entire career, it's what I've struggled with in pretty much everything else I worked in, is like everything else focused on adding more constantly. It's always about adding more code, adding more features. And here I am, I've spent, a couple months of my time at Vendr just deleting stuff. And that focus on like getting us down to just what matters to the user at the end of the day. There are no extraneous pages, there are no extraneous features. It's just what they are using and nothing more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I want to ask you about this process, the Zamboni process, and how you've moved away from that, because I was recently attempting to introduce the Elm review no unused, or the unused rule set, to our code base. And I did introduce it. I had removed a whole bunch of code, but found some pushback from somebody on the team that felt that it was keeping them from being productive. And, I'm still working through understanding how that is preventing productivity. But the thing that I think you can maybe see if you think about how our process works, where we have these feature toggles, we put things out there in production behind this feature toggle, and then it can still be certain that that feature, it may not be on for every customer or every user, or maybe no users, but we have a smaller set of code that we can review and release at a time. And so we try to get closer to that, continuous delivery process. But one of the things that happens with that is maybe as you're creating that incremental PR, you are building out a feature and maybe there's one or two things that you're not using yet, right? And so you can see how this would be a problem if you're using the no unused rule, right? Because I'm going to use that, I just haven't used it yet. Do you have any thoughts on that, or have you ran into that challenge?
Yeah, no, we definitely ran into that challenge. So the way I kind of went about it was, and I don't know if you're doing the same or not, but trying to introduce just one no unused rule at a time for maybe like 2-ish, 3-ish weeks, and then slowly adding the next. Definitely got very similar pushback of, oh, hey, I was using this, or I was about to use this. Can we not delete this right now? What worked for us, or has been working for us, is using the suppress
Mm-hmm.
command. elm-review suppress will take whatever errors it's throwing and say, okay, ignore this quantity of errors right now in this file. If the quantity of errors changes in this file, re-alert the user. Um,
Yeah, that's a super important feature. That was honestly, as soon as that feature came out, that was when I was able to introduce Elm Review, because at that point I'd wanted to deprecate some things, but in order to deprecate them, I needed to completely remove them before suppress rules were there. So when that came out, I was like, okay, now I can say this is how many we have now, but we're not going to add any more of that thing, and then, we're migrating to this, usually migrating to some other module or some other way of doing that. So yeah, I found that to be extremely helpful in just getting Elm Review off, getting it started. But with no one used, how would you go about that? Let's say that someone has that. Would they then run that on their branch? Would you review those suppression rules to see, okay, these things say they're not used, and that feature is now out there in production, or do you do anything with that?
yeah, we have it running on our CI. We have elm-review running without the fix flag, just to see if there are any errors. There definitely have been times initially when I would introduce a rule, I think more so in the very beginning, where we would hit issues with, oh, hey, like, how do I get around this? It doesn't happen as much anymore. We're still trying to figure out how to best go about making sure everyone's running Elm Review locally. I think that's been our biggest sticking point, is making sure that it's running locally for everyone as part of their dev process. We've kind of done this with Elm format, where we run Elm format on a commit hook, so that if you commit and you haven't run Elm format, you'll get a list of git changes of formatting.
Hmm.
So that way we enforce that. We're not quite there with Elm Review yet, just because it takes a little bit longer and I don't want to slow people down too much during committing. But I could see doing something similar maybe. So yeah, so we run it in CI. If there are errors, we try to alert the person, hey, please do this. So I've definitely gone through, speaking to deprecation specifically, we've been migrating away from old UI to new UI styles. Lots of deprecated code, lots and lots and lots of deprecated code. To help get around that, I do specifically ignore some of our like UI portions of our code, and I try to focus more on whether or not code is used in our pages, like our core, what the user sees. If a button is unused, really doesn't matter as much to the user. It's more about, or even the developer, it's more about if I'm on a page and there's a form that's unused, that's a lot more distracting to a developer, in my opinion, because that's a lot of code. That's possibly hundreds of lines of code versus 20 at most for a button. I think I tried to make it focus more on what's closer to the user in a way. I think
Yeah.
that
Okay.
helps a lot. And I'm very comfortable with saying, "Oh, ignore this entire directory. We're not going to worry about this." That has
Yeah.
made, I think, the team as a whole very comfortable with moving forward with new rules of they can come back if I introduce a new rule that says, oh, your whole thing is flagged red now with errors. And they're like, hey, I really need this. Can we not do this? I'm like, yeah, cool. Let's ignore your entire directory right now. You are fine to keep moving at whatever speed you need to move at.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I like that, being able to ignore certain directories, and I use that approach as well, that strategy. The overall process, and definitely with deprecation, I've found elm-review to be, just now I can't live without it. I feel like before, whenever you try to move, process or move certain strategies in a certain way, then you are doing a lot of manual work. I felt like I was doing a lot of PR, explanation, and then trying to guide things. But with this, I feel a lot more calm about it, because I can say, okay, I know that if something comes up that will catch it, we can have a conversation about it. Hey, this is the approach that we take. We use this package, not that package, or, whatever the case may be. And that has really been nice. But yeah, I think the only sticking point for me that I've seen that's really been a cause for concern with productivity and team buy-in would be the ability to, just handle unused code, but still have that rule in there. Do you think? Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's a tricky balance. It really is. I think it's a lot of. There was a quote from a talk Evan gave years ago. That code is the easy part, and to me, that applies to Elm Review and just engineering in general. And like Elm Review, like the rules are the easy part. Like adding or removing or tweaking a rule is so easy. Yeah. It's really just talk to your team and be very open with your team all the time, however and wherever you can. Like, I think that's definitely what allowed me to add rules the way I did. Is I was constantly in our front end channel and our just general engineering channels in Slack and being like, hey, I'm doing this. If you have any concerns before this gets merged into our code base, please let me know. I'm open to chat if you have any questions. If you are struggling, like, please just talk as much as we can about these things. And I think too, also Vendr has this rubber duck channels thing, which is a whole other topic. But just in my rubber duck channel, being very open about, hey, I'm working on adding these rules. I'm going to be doing this over this next week. If you have any concerns, if you think this will impact you, let me know. I'm going to make it as easy on you as possible. If you have any pushback, tell me, because I will make the changes. You don't have to do anything. So I think having that level of like communication with your team, that you are doing this to help the team, and if it's putting a burden on your team, then it's not the right move. Yeah. Like, it should be helping your team entirely. And if anyone should be carrying that burden, it should be you, because you're the one making the change.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'll put a link to that rubber duck thing, because you have that in your blog, a little description of how that works. I thought that was really neat. So we can put that in there. But yeah, what I like about the rules, and, even getting the team talking about it, before introducing a rule, we have these tech topics meetings, and sometimes the topic is just general front end, and I presented on some of these rules, hey, this is the thing we're going to introduce, and what do you think? Should we do it? Here are my concerns. And so I think that was really nice. But then also, when people have to actually confront that and say, oh, okay, now this rule has come up, what do I do about that? Then it's another conversation, and you can, kind of explain those benefits too. So yeah, I agree. The communication is key there. And of course, yeah, like Evan said, the code is the easy part. So yeah, that's great. I wanted to ask you, before we get too close to the end here, we're at an hour, but I wanted to ask you about Elm at Vendr, and I wanted to ask you kind of the size of the group there. How many people are using Elm? How many teams you have? Things like that.
So I know we're somewhere around 500 employees, I think, now. Still hiring. So yeah, if you want to join me in all the rest of us writing Elm at Vendor, please check us out. I would say even if you like doing backend and are just curious about Elm, like please like my current team is almost entirely backend devs except for myself, and they help out with front end here and there, and it's a lot of fun. Like I really enjoy pairing with them on front end code. They help me with back end code, so it's fun. But yeah, I think if I had to guess about how many of us are like dedicated front end, I would say around 10 to 15 maybe. I mean, that is a complete wild guess. So someone will probably correct me when they hear this. But yeah, it's. Trying to remember what the rest of the question was now.
Yeah, so of course the size of the company you answered, there's around 500 people. Yeah. You're growing, of course. You said there are 10 to 15 Elm devs, so that's how many people are working full time on Elm, right? Kind of front end. Yeah. And then you have some back end engineers who are also writing Elm occasionally as needed.
Yeah.
And then how many teams
of
developers?
I want to say there's about 7 or 8 teams with devs on them, with like PM, a designer, and then devs. Almost all are back-end heavy. I think there's at least one team that has no front-end devs, which I think is in a way a testament to Elm that so many back-end devs who are not Elm developers, in the traditional, like, that is not their forte at all, can pick it up and get into it. I know there's at least a couple I've worked with both on my team and other teams who they maybe hit me up once a month maybe for questions, maybe twice a month for questions. And they're usually something very complex that is unique to our code base. Like not even an Elm question, it's really just an our code base question, but they feel slightly intimidated because they don't feel as comfortable with Elm yet. But really, I would say they are Elm developers. Like they can write it very like if I had to throw them on their own project, they'd be fine. Like they wouldn't be coming to me with any questions.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we've hired a lot of folks who have, Python experience because our backend is in Python, but no Elm experience. And yeah, I've felt very comfortable, introducing Elm to everybody. And if someone is apprehensive, they feel like, oh, I'm not sure what to do here. I'm like, you can try some things. I'll give you some pointers. But also if you do something and it's too far off base, the compilers are going to tell you, it's your friend. And if you learn to embrace that relationship, then, you're going to have a good time. And I think that seems to have been the case so far. And it's really been nice to be able to bring people up to speed without feeling like, oh, we need to get a developer that already knows this. So that's definitely a testament to Elm. And so you're using Elm at, a growing scale at Vendr. What are there any particular challenges you feel like you're facing using Elm that you're running into right now that you're trying to solve?
How much time do I have in the day to write more code mostly? Like I keep expecting to hit like some wall with Elm. I really do. Like I've hit walls with other languages where I'm just like, okay, I'm really not sure how to do this. Yeah, I don't feel like I've hit those with Elm yet. So I will say like part of that is definitely that I have a decade plus of experience writing JavaScript, and Elm compiles JavaScript. So, if something goes wrong, it's just JavaScript at the end of the day, and I have a decade plus of experience reading and writing that. So I can very easily dive into compiled Elm and be comfortable doing that. I've had to do that, I think, twice, maybe at Vendr. Maybe twice. That might be pushing it. And
I was going to ask that because I can't imagine a time when I've actually done that. So it's twice. One of those times is I was being impatient and waiting for someone to flip a feature flag, and I didn't want to wait for the feature flag to get flipped. So I was debugging production compiled Elm.
trying, and so I was manually flipping the JavaScript flags and JavaScript, and yeah, I don't think most people will ever do that. But hey, when you know JavaScript, it's easy.
Sure.
Uh, the other time was write a fair amount of web components, and I still don't know the root cause, but I think we had an instance where, because of the way web component was running, it was sending a message into the Elm runtime late, which was then, because of the way custom types get compiled in Elm, when you compile with optimized on, they get compiled down to numbers. So the first the first constructor of a custom type becomes 0, then 1, then 2, and so on. And we were getting the wrong branch of an update running because of that. Because this message was getting sent back through web components delayed, it was running the wrong custom type only in production. Because 1 equals 1 in production code. So that required a bit of JavaScript debugging to try and figure out what is actually going on here. That was this is the only time I've ever encountered that in all my years of writing Elm. I've heard of it happening in other code bases, but never in any of my side projects have I encountered it. And I use lots of JavaScript in my side projects still too, like lots of web components. This is the only time I've ever seen it. There was Ryan Haskell Glatz. He and I paired, I think it was the first 2 weeks of being at Vendr, on a web component for doing modals. That is probably the closest I would say I've ever come to something like weird and challenging in Elm. We still need to write up a blog post about that. I'm bad at writing technical blog posts. So I've been kind of waiting for him to write it, and just my name on is also contributed to. But that was I should finish that blog post. Yeah, because that was an interesting problem space, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds like a valuable addition to the community. Something we can learn from.
Yeah, I have a series, I think, of blogs that I want to write about Elm as it relates to the DOM. The general idea being that, like, the browser doesn't have to be the only DOM. Like, document object model isn't specific to web browsers. Anything can be a DOM. And Elm uses a very tiny subset of DOM APIs. Like, I think it's about 10 or 12, maybe. DOM specific, or I guess browser specific, but they're really just, you can write your own DOM. Like, it's a very easy thing to do, to write your own DOM. And then, hey, JavaScript, if it compiles to it, Elm compiles to JavaScript, you're good. You can run Elm anywhere at that point.
Cool. Yeah. I think that would be really neat to see. So I hope that you do make it to that. No pressure, but if you do, I think it would be really helpful to read. So
maybe I can get it out by the time this episode really comes out.
There we go. Yeah.
Maybe that's my goal.
If you do, I'll put it in the show notes. If not, then we can read it when it comes.
Okay.
Okay, so let me ask you one thing about using web components, because I know that is a really useful tool. Could you explain a little bit what your strategy is for adding in web components with Elm at work?
Strategies.
I keep coming back to that word intentionally.
If I have something that I either don't want to take the time to write it in Elm, because it would be a whole project unto itself, like rich text editors. I think those are a pretty common one where, like, that is a whole project unto itself. You could start a company probably on an Elm rich text editor. So I don't want to do that. I just want to use one, so wrap it in a web component. That was actually kind of how I, partly getting into Elm, like maybe my first year of writing Elm was writing a web component wrapper for a Mozilla project called Fluent, which is for localization. At that point in my career, I had written a localization for EXTJS stuff, or I'd used it in EXTJS. I had used it in Ember. I had used it in React. I think I'd used it in jQuery. I had looked at it in Angular, and I was like, I don't want to write this again. Like, I'm just done writing localization. Like, every framework is like, oh, use localization in our package. And I'm like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm going to write it once as a web component and be done. So yeah, I wrote a little wrapper. I've not had a chance to really use it for anything production wise, but it works as best as I can tell. Like, I have it running in Svelte and Elm and vanilla HTML, and it works for all of them nearly identically. I'm like, perfect. I don't ever have to write this again. If I ever need to do localization, done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of surprised that it worked so well, that approach to it. I felt like I didn't think about it in that way of taking that approach, but I'll definitely add a link in the show notes to that project because I think that is a really useful answer for that. And of course, the example that I've always come back to for adding a web component is something like a map, but also a rich text editor makes sense. One of the strategies that I think about with it is, is there already something off the shelf that I can use that has maybe its own, it's either really complex to write how it works, and particularly if it has its own kind of, let's say, internal state, right? Or in Elm, its own nested Elm architecture, where you could write it in Elm and you would be able to wire it all up. But if there's something already there and it's a web component, then you kind of get to not worry about that internal stuff, and you only send back the events that you care about, right? You don't care if this drop-down list, this fancy drop-down list is open and, whether it has focus. You just care what was selected and, move on.
Yeah.
So I think, there are some cases like that where it's just a really nice strategy, as opposed to that wouldn't make sense to use ports for that type of an integration, right? So yeah, I think that there are times where web components are just such a nice tool.
Yeah, they really are. They really are.
Good thing to have in your pocket. Well, what are you excited about these days, Wolfgang?
What am I excited about? Excited for rock.
What's rock?
Richard Feldman's project. I've been following that for, God, I've been known about it for at least 3 years, I want to say now. I think over 3 years. I want to say 2019 might have been when I first heard about it.
Okay.
So I've been following that. I hang out in the Zulip there. What else am I excited about? Unison is the other thing I've been really excited about. Just another language trying to solve unique problems. Also, their package docs are written in Elm. If you're in the Elm Slack, you might see some people talking about that every now and then.
So you said you were interested in rock and you've been watching it. It's Richard Feldman's project, the programming language that he's building. Do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a taste of what it's about?
Yeah, I would say it's very much a descendant of Elm. It is very Elm-like writing it. I've written a little bit, just hobby stuff here and there. It feels very similar. I would say the focus is more on building on top of this like framework-ish idea that Elm has of when I'm writing Elm, I am writing a browser dot application or browser dot element or platform dot worker. That is what I'm writing. I'm not just writing anything. I'm targeting something very specific. And rock is very much, to me, building on top of that. I know Richard's talked about that a lot in his talks, of that kind of framework meets language idea. That's definitely what's excited me about it. I really like that direction of languages a bit. And then also the other thing that kind of makes it unique is going more for how it does unions, whereas Elm has tagged unions. Like when you do a custom type in Elm, rocks are more like TypeScript unions, I would say, if you're familiar with those. So it's Elm, but with slightly different custom types in a way. And then it does a fancy thing called backpassing, which you'd have to look up to get a good example of it. But I would say pleasant to the eyes way of doing chained code, where you have to do a lot of functions in a row and use all of the values from those functions. I would say if you like Elm and you would like to see Elm on different platforms and different types of like programs, Rock is definitely something to check out.
Cool. Well, this has been a great discussion. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we move on to picks?
No, about covers it, I think.
All right. Yeah. So what picks do you have for us today?
So Front End Happy Hour is definitely a pick of mine. I don't listen to too many podcasts anymore now that I'm working from home and have been. That is one I try to check in on every now and then. Specifically want to call out Stacy London, who's one of the hosts on there. I got to work with her years ago at Corvisa, and she's the one who really got me into accessibility, I guess, with web and stuff. And I think that's really kind of driven a lot of my code stuff is accessibility to some extent. So definitely check out Front End Happy Hour. And then I would say my other two, there's an old podcast that just had its first new episode, and I want to say it's been 9 years, called A Life Well Wasted with Robert Ashley. That was like early college for me. It was like a lot of that and a lot of his other podcasts he was on. And I think it's that what I said earlier, just I like talking to people and communication is good. And that, to me, that podcast is all about going out and meeting people.
Neat.
And
okay.
those are my two picks.
Excellent. I like it. I'll have to check those out, and I'll put those links in the show notes. So my two picks, one Elm related, one not. The Elm related one is Matthew Griffith's Elm Code Gen. I definitely use that at work to generate things like icons and the endpoints from the back end, from Python to Elm. Create some guarantees there, and I totally enjoy it. It's great. Thank you, Matthew. And then the other one is a book. It's Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. If you're not familiar with his work, it is kind of fantasy, but the author, Haruki Murakami, has a background in running a jazz bar for a number of years. And so the writing kind of reflects that. And there's one section that I just really enjoyed in this book that I read over and over again, where it's talking about an imperfect composition and someone trying to play that composition and never being able to get it right because it is imperfect. And the way that he says it is so much nicer than that. But that's page 110, 111 around in there. So yeah, definitely if you check it out, look for that part. If you're interested in those kinds of things. I didn't really find myself when I started thinking that I enjoyed this aspect of fantasy novel. It just kind of didn't sound like my kind of thing. But after I read it, it's very kind of mind expanding. It feels like when I'm reading it, I'm like trying to stretch out and understand the things that are going on. And then of course the musical little tidbits in there are fun for me. So yeah, that's what I have. But yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks, Wolfgang, for coming to Elm Town.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jared, for having me. It's a pleasure.